Hey, Dad.
Hey, how are you tonight?
Good. I thought it'd be interesting to talk about on this show we regularly talk about things I learned from you growing up, the good and the bad, right?
Uh,
Uh, but I remember one thing that you would regularly say. I would be like, Dad, I'm looking at somebody over here, and they're so much further along in life. I remember specifically, I didn't start college right out of high school, and all my other friends did.
Yeah,
And I remember feeling so behind the curve because of that. And you said, listen, you mentioned 2 Corinthians 10:12. It says, when they compare themselves to themselves, you're not wise. So basically, anytime you're comparing yourself to another human being, it's going to create instant misery.
yeah,
And you said you've got to walk your own journey. And then I remember comparing musically, my musical skills with other people. And you said something to the effect of, well, Joel, there's always going to be a faster gun. And I was like, what
yeah.
does that mean? And you said
Oh,
the faster gun is like in the West, in the Wild West, there's always somebody who can draw faster than you. Like, um, and I've seen that. I think the internet has accelerated the danger of comparison for us because we literally, it used to be you lived in you had your little high school and you were the best at something in your high school, right?
yeah,
And
exactly.
yeah, and then you realize when you got to college you weren't really that amazing or whatever.
Yeah,
But nowadays you can compare yourself at any given moment to anybody in the world, and
yeah,
when you're comparing yourself, there's going to be somebody that's faster, better looking, smarter, has achieved more, has a way cooler vacation than you did. You're happy that you got to go, the Texas coast, and your buddies on the French Riviera, and you're like,
yeah, yeah,
ah. So I want to talk about this idea of comparison and how to avoid falling into the trap of that.
yeah, yeah. Well, the hard part too is even if they aren't like better looking and smarter and all this stuff, Photoshop can really do amazing things.
Yes. All those filters, I know. It's
Oh
like,
yeah, and you can lie on
wow,
the internet. I mean,
wow, the
whatever.
sun really shines that bright on them.
I know
That's
it's amazing,
incredible.
isn't it? Yeah.
Yes.
How does that happen? They really have a glow around their head.
That's right.
Yeah, so you're always, whenever you go to comparison, you're going to find yourself falling in one side or the other. It's either going to be pride, like, wow, look at that goofball. I get to do this, and he only gets to do that. Or usually the way it works, particularly now with Photoshop and filters and all that stuff, where you can take your highlight moment and capture that. The day was miserable, but for 30 seconds the sun shone and everything was going good. So that's the 1 millimeter, 1/25th of a second.
It's
I'm
the
going to put on
ESPN the highlight reel. You watch, 4.5 hours of baseball, and there's one home run, and you're like, wow, look at that home run. It was
the highlight
incredible.
reel. Yeah,
Yeah.
amazing. The rest of it was like pretty dull and boring, but
Yeah.
yeah. And so, and you don't even have to have a live photo. It's just like the 1/125th of a second. So all you have to put on Facebook. And so if you had that much of a good day, you can make it look awesome. So usually what I'm saying is it usually leads to discouragement when we're trying to compare ourselves to others, because we can only see the outside. We can
Yeah.
only see the part that the other people project. And with us, we see the really messed up, screwed up, fouled up stuff inside, and the parts when we're not out in the public and when we're just, feeling depressed and all that's going on inside of us.
We
We all
know
deal with
us,
that.
right?
Yeah, we
Yeah.
know us, and that's the worst part about it. And we know, we know what's going on inside, even though we might look good on the outside. You can paint it up and fix it up and make it look good and light it up just right, but you know what's going on inside. And so, yeah, comparison is really. I mean, Scripture talks about that too. You quoted the Scripture earlier when he said, "When you do compare yourselves to others, you're what? Not
Not
wise,"
wise.
which is a polite way of saying what? You're
You're a
foolish.
fool, right?
Don't do that. That's really stupid to do that.
I have to constantly remind myself you can't compare. And one of the things that I've actually found, as a pastor and counselor, I end up in people telling me they're junk, right? I've seen this, that typically when you're comparing yourself to somebody's life on Facebook, I've seen on Facebook, the more vocal somebody is about how good their life is,
Yeah,
honestly, it's not. I've seen over and over that people are on these amazing, 20-day cruise, and they're like, I love my husband so much, and blah, blah, and their
yeah.
selfies. And then they get home, they're like, we're calling it quits. And you're like, you just went on an epic cruise. We saw, yeah, well, that was our last ditched effort to save the marriage. And I think how many people compared their life and their marriage. My husband never took me on a 20-day
Yeah,
cruise.
yeah,
And you're comparing your life to something that's it's basically lies.
yeah, yeah.
And I don't think it's intentional. I'll never forget. I had this person I was working with, and this person that same day they called me. They had lost their job. the person they were dating had broken up with them, and on top of that, they got in their apartment. They got booted out of their apartment. That
You read
seemed
all that on Facebook, right? That's how
no,
they.
this
That's how
person.
No, I know.
No, they told me this.
Yeah.
20 minutes later, I see that person on Facebook. They've got their feet propped up, drinking an adult beverage by the pool. It's a pool, right? They're at a ratty, like, 0.5 star 2-bit hotel, but all you see is the blue pool, the martini or whatever it was, and they put hashtag life is good. I was like, you freaking liar!
Yeah.
I know your life is horrible. You just got booted out of your apartment, lost your job, and got broken up with. But I think sometimes you're trying to convince yourself. But here's the problem with it: you put that up there, and somebody over here who's got 3 kids at home, they're changing dirty diapers, and they're like, I wish my life was that good. And I'm like, it's so bogus.
And the reason you didn't mention you're down by the pool is that the bed has bed bugs, so you had to
That's right.
You had to get out of there. So
I'm sleeping on the pool recliner, right?
Yeah, exactly. What a life, Yeah, and the other thing, like the couple on the cruise, and the woman who's home and sees how my husband never took me. Your husband never cheated on you either, so he didn't have to do that cruise to kind of make up. It's like, but it's so boring. You don't think of those things. You always just think of, oh, it's so boring. Look at my life. It's just so daily. Yeah.
And you just don't know. And that's the thing. You just don't know the other person's pain. And everybody's got some pain they carry with them. And so if you're just comparing yourself to their positives, I had that with Jonathan. So my brother, Jonathan, you know him, you raised him, right?
I remember him.
The guy just he always gets it quicker than me. He sees stuff coming quicker than I do. He just knows where stuff's going. He just succeeds.
He's in another realm, isn't he?
He is. He's brilliant.
Me too.
Somebody asked me, they said,
keep up with him.
They're like, do you ever get jealous when you compare yourself to him? I'm like, actually, no, because I know the struggles he has. He has struggles. Everybody's got struggles. But I also know he works his tail off. Like I'm waking up trying to get the sleep out of my eyes, sipping coffee, and he's already been on a bus commuting downtown to his co-working space, right? That's my brother. But that's the thing. If you don't know a person's story and you start comparing, it immediately leads to envy, jealousy. And I see my brother. He works 3 times harder than I do. He deserves everything that has come to him. God has provided for him, but you don't see that. And so if I'm just sitting there if I didn't know his story and I just compared, I'd be like, dang man, what's the deal?
Because that's the other thing. The fruit that we see in people's lives usually comes from things that they do that we don't see in their lives. So it's like, gosh, he gets all the breaks. No, he's always knocking on doors and throwing seeds out, and that's why he has stuff. So. Yeah, and it's that way in all of our lives. It's like, well, gosh, that guy doesn't do anything, No, you don't know what all he's really doing. And it just seems like things come his way, but you don't know how many doors he's been knocking on. You don't know how many streets he's been pounding and what he's been doing for that miracle to come his way,
Yeah. And you also don't know how in debt they had to go to pay for that cruise.
Sometimes too. That's it too. Yeah.
I wish well, you don't know what the credit card bill they're carrying. So,
that's the advantage of the breakup. At least they get to split the cost of the cruise. Okay. Well, so anyway,
So walk your own path.
Yeah.
How do you figure out, when you stay focused on your own path, I think that's the key to avoiding comparison.
Well, here, I'll tell a quick story. And I don't know if it's an Aesop fable, but let's give him credit so that the Aesop Foundation doesn't sue us, okay? There's a story about these 3 animals that met in the forest, and the rabbit, an eagle, and a turtle. And the rabbit was talking to the eagle, says, I'd like to learn to fly like you. It's easy. I can teach you. And the eagle, he says, he looks at the turtle and says, oh, I'd like to swim like you. And the turtle says, oh, it's easy. I can teach you. And then the turtle looks at the rabbit and says, oh, I'd like to be able to run and jump like you. And so, it's easy. The rabbit says, I'll teach you. So anyway, the whole story goes into it. And they each try to teach each other their skills. And the, eagle about drowns and he just can't flop around in the water, and the turtle bumps his head, runs right into a tree, can't jump. And, and the rabbit just about dies trying to learn to fly. So the point is, every one of them was magnificent at what they were created to do, but trying to do something else. I mean, an eagle is glorious in the sky, but put it in the water. I mean,
that's a pretty pathetic spectacle.
You just see that thing flapping around there, the wings and everything. And I think that's sometimes what we try to do is God's created us to fly or to, run or to, whatever the skill might be, whatever. He's gifted us with something. And sometimes though, because it comes so natural to us, I know it comes naturally to us, we go, well, then it's not that big a deal.
Or everybody can do
that.
Big deal.
Yeah, we think everybody can.
No, they
I want to learn to do that. And no, you have to do what God's created you to do. You can do other things for fun. And, I mean, the eagle I guess he could go out and get a boat and, kayak around or whatever, but he's not going to learn to swim, right?
Right. Yeah.
So there's things you can do for fun, but if you're really trying to be what God's not created you to be, it's kind of like, is it Malcolm Gladwell? He talks about you may be a 5 and
Marcus Buckingham.
Buckingham. Okay, I get
Yeah.
him and two other guys all confused. Him and Eleanor Roosevelt. I can't tell the difference. Anyhow, because all the quotes that you see, if nobody knows who it was, it's either Eleanor Roosevelt or Teddy Roosevelt or Martin Luther, if it's a Christian one. So anyhow, Buckingham said, you may be like a 5 at something, and what we think we're supposed to do is work on our weaknesses. Well, he says, if it's a 5, you may get to be a 7, but you're never going to get to be a 10. So why not figure out what you're good at? And like, if you're something you're a 7 at, work on that. And if you can only go up 2 notches, well, then you're a 9 instead of 5 to a 7. So you just
don't compare yourself to somebody who's a 7 in a gift that you're never going to.
It's just who you are, and the ability, because there's always a faster gun. Watch a few Westerns and you'll figure that one out. There's always a faster gun. There's always somebody that's better than you. And so if you're always comparing yourself to them, you're always going to come up short.
Be grateful for what you are, what you have. Don't discount it. Leverage that. And there's a favorite quote of mine that says, the art of using moderate ability to advantage often brings greater results than actual brilliance. Francois de la Rochefoucauld. So you may look at somebody, you're like, wow, they're way smarter than me. But hey, your moderate ability that could actually go further if you use it to your advantage. So hey, if you've enjoyed this podcast, we've got a long-term, long form version of it. You can check it on iHeart. Never get this. iHeart,
Spotify,
iTunes, and Spotify. Yeah, you can check those out. It's called The Malm Podcast. More information on that, and you can check it right there. And great talking to you, Dad.
Hey, you too. See you later.